Hey, welcome to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey of exploration with you. We often find ourselves reflecting on the choices we've made and wondering how our lives might have unfolded differently if we had taken a different path. Here's the beauty of hindsight. It gives us a chance to gain wisdom and learn from our past decisions. Look, this podcast is a platform to dig deep into those pivotal moments and uncover the invaluable lessons hidden within. Look, I'm Lee Jones, your host, and I couldn't be more excited to have you on board. So let's dive right in and explore the fascinating realm of decisions on Hindsight the Podcast.
When you look back in hindsight, everything is 20/20. In hindsight, you make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, shaping yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, it's so much clearer now. This is Hindsight the Podcast, and introducing your host, Lee Jones.
Hey, welcome to Hindsight the Podcast. It's me, Lee Jones, your host, and today I'm sitting down with the clarity coach, Mark Kanty, an expert in online coaching, business strategy, and a co-presenter of the popular Upscale Your Business podcast. Mark's passion lies in empowering coaches and consultants to unleash their full potential as he guides them on a transformative journey to create a thriving online coaching practice. With his entrepreneurial background spanning over 40 years, Mark has honed his expertise in creating, launching, and selling numerous businesses across various industries. Join me in welcoming the clarity coach, Mark Kanty, to Hindsight the Podcast. How you doing, Mark?
I am doing fantastic, Lee.
So, Mark, the clarity coach, we'll get into that a little bit later, but just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, a great question. And I will try not to spend too much time because there's a lot of history there. But I tell you, I need to let you know some of my personal history. And I'm going to go way back to when I was just 7 years old. And when I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug then was when my father left an 18-year corporate executive job for an international firm and quit. Moved out of the city and bought a small business in cottage country, working with boats. So basically a marina. And from that age onward, I really had the amazing and wonderful chance to grow up in a small business environment, in a family business environment. And that personal history really changed me. I mean, it put me on a path of realizing that I didn't necessarily need to go and line up and get a job, if you will, or be dependent on someone else for my security. But that I early on learned that taking the risk to depend on myself for my security was something that was not only possible, but allowed for, a thriving family life and just a wonderful way to grow up. So that's a little bit of my background coming from, inception, if you will. And then over the years, I've had bought, sold, launched numerous businesses, did my degree in university and saw, my friends, my peers lining up 60, 70 deep to get jobs in corporate. And once again, that awakening was right there to let me know that wasn't for me. I wasn't going to be pursuing a corporate career, if you will. Now, I appreciate that most of the people that I work with, though, do come from that background. So they develop their skills and they're awakening to this idea of becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner, something they can craft of their own is something that maybe came later in life or through a few different jobs, if you will. But that wasn't necessarily the path for me. How's that, Lee? Does that give you a bit of meat?
Absolutely. Especially when I put on there spanning over 40 years of that entrepreneurial background.
Yes.
So have you ever gotten a job, McDonald's or Burger King, anything like that? Or you just strictly started off being an entrepreneur from the beginning?
I did have the odd, full, transparency, full confession here. While I was going to school, I did have the odd summer job, a couple summers. I did have jobs doing various things where I did collect a paycheck for a couple months while I was on break, summer break from going to school. And other than that, in terms of my full-time career, if you will, and careers that I've had have all been oriented around businesses that I've owned and created.
Wow, you are definitely the guy to talk to today. Hey, look, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I know right now you're I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're more coaching, right?
Yes.
Coaching business. So your expertise in online coaching and business strategy is impressive. And can you share with us how you first discovered your passion for like empowering coaches and consultants?
You bet. Again, a little bit of history. Back in 2003, I found myself in the Republic of Panama doing work for a developer who was developing an expat community there. I'd had some experience because my wife and I had established and launched and built up a fitness business and built that up from one location to two locations in a day spa. And then we sold that. We sold that to a chain. And I had the opportunity to go and consult and work with this company, this fellow, if you will, as a consultant down in the Republic of Panama. And that really opened my eyes. Although I'd been doing, consulting prior to that, we're talking somewhat pre-internet days, if you will, or I wasn't really online that much. But it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of working online. Because everything we did in terms of attracting people and doing our marketing was all done via the internet back in those years. We couldn't hang out a sign. We couldn't hand out flyers. We were attracting people from thousands of miles away. So when I left that, and in 2005, I said, that's it. I'm just going to go exclusively online. And the natural transition there, too, over the years went from consulting and working with companies in what we would call back then a consulting capacity, just naturally evolved into a coaching capacity. Even back then when I was consulting, I was really coaching as well. It was a hybrid model, if you will. And to this day, I still do a combination, and as do many coaches out there, sharing experience, sharing expertise, certain things that we know that we can help somebody get a result a lot faster. I call that consulting. And then the coaching element comes in. And the coaching element is really getting into often some psychological ideas, some barriers to improvement, some belief systems and things that might be holding somebody back because they don't know what they don't know about how they're behaving and what's happening and what might be stunting their growth or preventing them to get what they want, if you will. So that was 2005, really, was when I started into the coaching space in earnest, and specifically working in the digital or virtual environment as a coach.
I jumped the gun a little bit. I wanna take two steps back, even though you went back a little bit. But
yes,
looking back on your entrepreneurial journey and the challenges you must have faced, is there a particular obstacle or setback that, in hindsight, turned out to be a significant learning experience and helped shape your path as the clarity coach?
Oh, definitely. Many along the way. In fact, one of my first real forays into business, I was in my early 20s, built a business up to $1 million and then had the rug pulled out from underneath me, lost everything. I was able to shut that business down without declaring bankruptcy and with also keeping my integrity intact. So I was able to maintain all of those relationships with suppliers and people that I worked with. Because of that experience, I actually caught the attention of a consulting firm that got in touch with me. I'd met the founder of the firm, and he actually sent me a plane ticket and said, I want you to come and spend a week with me. I want to talk to you because you've done something that I haven't seen other people do. Most people just pull the plug, declare bankruptcy, and move on, where you chose to stick around and do it in a different way. And I want you to come and talk to me about that and your experience. And I ended up working for that fellow for a number of years, not as an employee, but as a consultant and a coach, working with his clients in terms of helping them navigate tough times and helping them figure out their numbers and their people. We call that balancing the economic and the human equation, to make sure that those businesses could weather tough times and not have to, really pull the plug. So that was very formative for me. During those times, I met some amazing people and learned a lot about human behavior, everything from needs-based psychology to values-based psychology to neurolinguistic programming, a number of other factors that came into play where we could work with these business owners at a level that was much deeper than what most people were working with them at. And I was able to hone those skills and really become more of a coach and a better coach because of that training and that human relations understanding. Does that answer your question, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you guide individuals to rediscover their unique competencies and create thriving online coaching practices. So it's not online businesses. This is specifically for coaches.
Yes, I work with coaches people who have had that desire to serve others in a coaching capacity. Mm-hmm. Now, they might work in different industries. Maybe they're a business coach. Maybe they're a career coach. Maybe they're an executive coach. That doesn't matter to me. The core of this is that we're doing is we're taking that expertise, just like myself, that personal history, everything you've done up to this point brings you to this stage of having the ability to give that away, of being able to serve others. So to be in service as a coach, to be able to step out, we want to draw on that personal history and help others learn from not only our wins and our gains and our successes, but our failures as well, and the pain that we've experienced, so that we can help them navigate that. So that's a foundational element. And where I have a unique kind of view on things, if you will, is most people come to me and they have what I would call, or Michael Gerber used to call this, technical skills. So they've got coaching skills. They maybe know how to coach somebody, but they have no idea how to build a coaching business. And they think because they know how to have the technical skills, they know how to coach somebody, that they don't need to worry about the other side of it. But these two skill sets are mutually exclusive. So we need to go into that area and develop those core skills, those core business skills, in terms of how to create a thriving coaching business or coaching practice. That's critical to not only success, but critical to longevity as well.
Wow. You mentioned Michael Gerber. I had an opportunity to sit in on one of his trainings.
Yes.
But it was for a different reason. But, met his wife, beautiful woman, and his teaching and everything was amazing. So I know you're coming from, at least, did you sit on any? Did you sit in on any of his teachings?
I first came across Michael in 1990. So dating myself here, quite some time ago. And as a matter of fact, that topic comes up and you mentioned that. I'm actually rereading the E-Myth right now. I have multiple copies in my library because I give them away all the time. But I'm looking back to that original version that's all dog-eared and highlighted. And I'm in the middle of rereading that right now. And I try and reread that book probably a couple times a year. So if you can kind of do the math on that, 1990 to now, you'll get an idea of how many times I've read that book.
Right.
And I highly recommend it. It's an absolute gem, particularly for anybody that's looking at starting their own business or going into business. Understanding how your technical skills are one thing you bring to the table, but you need to put those aside for a moment and work on your business development skills if you're going to achieve a level of success and satisfaction and happiness.
Absolutely. The online space may seem inviting with minimal barriers to entry, but you emphasize the need for unwavering commitment and a desire to learn and apply proven business strategies. Could you tell us about maybe a time when your commitment was tested and how you overcame those challenges or that challenge?
Oh, that's a great question. And let me think if I can think of a specific time, because I'll tell you what, it happens on a regular basis. Probably happened last weekend, and I think this is one of these underlying principles that people need to understand is they think, well, I'm going to go into business for myself and everything's going to be, unicorns and rainbows. And it's not. You're going to experience tremendous ups and you're also going to experience tremendous downs. And it's through those moments of stress and challenge and frustration that we have to climb back up the mountain and go again. And this is that commitment that comes into play. And it's very tough for somebody to understand when they come out of a position where maybe they've been educated and then they get a job and they've never been self-employed before. is that's scary. And they think that, growth is just continuous and everything will always be good. But it's not. There's tremendous, adversity that you need to realize that you're going to experience, because the buck stops here. You're in charge. You're the chief, the kahuna. And as a result, you need to take on that responsibility and be aware of that. So I go to the well. The first thing I have to do is acknowledge that, is when I'm in a low spot and I realize that something's happened and, things aren't coming together. The first thing to do is just to accept that, is to say, this is my reality at this moment in time. And I can pout and I can feel upset and I can feel mad at myself, or I can feel jealous or envy or any of those feelings, and allow myself to experience those feelings. And then basically stand up, brush oneself off, and start to do the work and move forward and realize that you're not alone.
Right.
That every person of any level of success in the world has gone through all of these speed bumps and more, and will go through them again before they die. And that
absolutely, you
embrace the roller coaster, if you will. You embrace that and accept that for what it is, because it's only through adversity, it's only through those real tough spots when we have to pull ourselves up that we can appreciate the high points. Because if we're not, we're just kind of flatlining, we're just kind of coasting along.
Right.
And there's no fun in that, and there's no passion in that, and there's no satisfaction in that, there's no fulfillment in that, and to be perfectly honest, there's no achievement in that either. So that ability to accept, first of all, where you are, to acknowledge and accept it, and to learn to let it go, to not resist it, and then to begin the work. And that work often involves, like I do, relating back to things that you've learned, picking up that old book that was so inspirational to you, listening to a podcast, watching a video, something that had value to you in the past will have value to you again. And looking for those roots. And I really encourage people to do that first and avoid the internet. Because if you get online and you start to go on social media and everything, you're going to find that there are a lot of problems out there that you didn't even realize you had. And you're going to run off chasing squirrels and rabbits that don't even exist in your life. Right. And looking for the next new thing, the next shiny object that's going to solve your problems. When the solutions lie within, they lie in your personal history. They lie in what you've already learned. You begin there. Otherwise, you just become, a perpetual buyer of off-the-shelf products, of what everybody's peddling out there. And that's what we need to stop. That's one thing I'm very passionate about, is we need to stop a lot of this, because we're saturated with it. We just have a real pile of junk. I call it litter, internet litter out there, of people making false promises and selling you the latest, greatest program. So those, sorry, not to get off on a tangent there, Lee, but
no, that's good.
Those are some thoughts and some insights around my own experiences with adversity and how I overcome them. And the most important thing is learning to embrace them, learning to realize that that's part of the journey, man. That's where it comes from. A little metaphor. I love metaphors. So it's kind of like, let's say you're into not necessarily mountain climbing, but you really, maybe you're hiking and you want to get to this peak. And, if you could transport up to the top of the peak, would you even want to do it? Like, why would you take the chairlift or the gondola when you can do the hike? It's the journey, the hike. And, when you're digging deep, when your chest hurts or your legs hurt, and you're really pulling, to get to the top, that's where the joy comes from, doesn't it? That effort. And that's what's so important about being in business is learning to appreciate the journey, and learning to appreciate when you get that burn, when you're working hard and you get that burn and realize, wow, this is really something. And when you get to the top, then you look down and you look for the next peak, the next higher peak that you want to climb.
Right. I'm looking at these questions that I'm asking you, and I feel I'm putting you in the hot seat. But you're shooting off these answers most excellently. Everything that I expected you would do. Definitely appreciate your insight, and you're sharing some of your personal, struggles, achievements, accomplishments, right? Because it's all about the journey. You just spoke on it.
Yeah,
But
thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. I
absolutely.
appreciate that affirmation.
So marketing research can be a powerful tool for understanding clients' desires.
Yes.
Can you share an example of how you've used marketing research to uncover valuable insights for your own coaching practice or a client's?
Yes, constantly. So research is a big word and a big topic. We can do that from a number of different perspectives. Here are a few of my favorites. Is I like to go to things like Reddit and Quora and things like that and look at what questions are people asking. What are they dialoguing about? And these are amazing tools where you can dig in deep and find a topic that's very specific and personal to you in terms of the business that you're doing. And look specifically at the language that people are using. We often want to have the perfect website or the perfect messaging or the perfect ad. And unfortunately, where the biggest mistake comes is thinking that our opinion actually counts. Because it doesn't. It's really irrelevant what we think. What's important is the way our prospect or our client thinks and what they say and the words that they use. So starting by doing some research in some of these forums where you can see some dialogue going on, we can do the same thing on social media. We can go to groups and join groups and look at the dialogue that's going on. We can ask questions and look for how people respond to those questions. And don't be fake about it. Don't ask leading questions that you think you're hoping for an answer that you're looking for. Ask open questions that are really thoughtful, and then take that to heart. Really understand what people are saying. You can take that to the next level, and you can even test that. Spend a little money, do a little advertising, and throw out some specific language and statements and questions that you've learned by studying your prospect and see if they respond to that. In other words, validate your assumptions before charging forward. So those are a couple things that come, just off the top of my mind. Lee, is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I had a friend of mine. He hit me up to Reddit. So you can find pretty much anything you're looking for on there. So that's definitely a great resource and an example
Yes.
of that marketing part.
Yes.
So what do you feel? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, one of the other areas too would be look at your competition, study their ads, look at what they're doing in the language that they're using, because very often you can piggyback on that. You can take the language they're using, and go, maybe these guys have done a little research. I'm going to now take their research and do my own on top of that.
That's a great strategy.
That. Yeah,
it's a great strategy.
A little bit of what do we call that? Competitive. There's a term for it, and I can't remember it. But basically competitive analysis, just looking at what other people are doing and looking at it objectively. Yeah.
Right. How do you feel about artificial intelligence?
I think artificial intelligence is there's no sense in really having any kind of feeling about it at all, because it's here and it's going to grow dramatically. The question is,
it already has. Yeah.
It already has. And it's going to, it's taking over at a tremendous rate. The question is, how do we make sure that we use it ethically and from a values-driven standpoint? Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. There's a lot of charlatans out there. 90% of what you're going to see online right now is basically showing you how to get rich quick and how to trick the system using AI. And chances are you're going to fail doing that or get caught. So that's not a very ethical approach, in my opinion. Instead, we need to look at AI and say, how does this allow us to learn at a much faster rate?
Right.
So specifically, to give you an example, how I view AI, and I learned this from some of the best. Rich Schefren, who's been around the block a long time, if anybody knows him, Rich Schefren of Strategic Profits, and also Sam Woods is doing incredible stuff in this regard. And Sam Woods was the one that really, I remember him saying this specifically, is we can't look at AI, particularly ChatGPT or something like that, as a data research tool. It's not just another Google, and it's not a data research tool. In fact, that's dangerous, because the data right now with ChatGPT, for example, was input in from 2021 was the cutoff date. So you can also get some incorrect and inaccurate answers if you think of it as a research data tool. Instead, what we can use AI for, and again, these are Sam's words, is as a reasoning tool. So think of AI and ChatGPT as your very best friend, like as an advisor who has multiple PhDs and a wealth of information, so that you can have a chat with them. Right. You can talk to them and use them to develop your own reasoning, to bounce things off of, to get ideas from. That's a very powerful way to use AI.
Have you been able to successfully use any AI tools in marketing or even in coaching that has helped your business out?
Definitely. Good. I use ChatGPT extensively on almost a daily basis as a reasoning tool. Here's an example. If you're trying to communicate a message to somebody, let's say you're writing up, maybe an email, or you're writing up a brief blog post or an ad or something like that, and you have an idea in your mind of what you mean. In other words, the meaning that you want the person to receive from your writing. You can put that into ChatGPT, for example, and say, what's the meaning that you get from reading this? And see what comes back.
Right.
You'll be amazed at what the result of that output is.
Yeah, it's definitely a strategy and a not necessarily a science, but if you tailor your prompts correctly, you can get some very insightful feedback using those AI platforms. Absolutely. The pursuit of coaching everyone can lead to burnout and diluted impact. Have you encountered a situation where focusing on a specific niche or target audience led to potential exponential growth in your own business?
Oh, constantly and over and over again. All of the clients that I've worked with, that's one of the first things we do is look at what's the unique driver. Again, I'm going to go back to personal history. What is the unique market that they're uniquely destined to serve? So if we look at their personal history, their experiences, everything that's brought them to this point, a natural niche will come out of that. So this is where a lot of people, I believe, get the cart before the horse, or they reverse this. They say, oh, what's a hot, juicy niche where I can make a lot of money, and now I'm going to go after that. No. The niche starts with you.
Right.
It starts with your passions, your desires, your knowledge, your aha moments, all of those things that you've learned that have brought you to this point in life.
Right.
From there, then we start to look at who is this going to be most valuable for?
That's a good way to look at it, because sometimes when you go into starting a business, right, I mean, it's wide open, and, trying to find that niche where, you can differentiate yourself from not necessarily the competition, but get away from a lot of the competition and focus specifically on this thing instead of everything.
Yes.
So yeah,
you can literally eliminate. I believe that you can basically eliminate the concept of competition.
Right. Exactly.
If you do this effectively, because who can compete with you?
Right.
Who can compete with your personal history? Even if you were an identical twin, you and your twin will have unique and different personal histories. And you're as unique as a snowflake. Sorry about the, maybe sounding a little flowery there, but we all are. And so so when you build a business around you, so this is this idea of people, I love the way you just said that, when I'm looking for a niche. So this idea that if I just wander around in the garden and pick up enough rocks, that underneath one of those rocks, there will be a gold nugget called my niche. This is the niche I need to go after. No. And this is where people struggle. They struggle and they struggle and they struggle. And maybe they find it, I heard this niche was hot. I'm going to go after it. And I'm going to go after the AI niche. I'm going to go after the cannabis niche, whatever the hot topic is on the media, because they're trying to find something as opposed to looking within. So stop looking outside, externally, look inside. That's where your niche lies. Yes.
It's all in there. Gotcha.
Yeah. And nobody can compete with that.
Embracing simplicity in an overwhelming online world is a profound concept. Can you share an example of how simplifying your approach or business model had a transformative effect on your journey as an online entrepreneur?
Yeah, a perfect segue from the niche topic is when we start to really narrow down. And here's a good example, and to answer your question,
Mm-hmm.
is Seth Godin wrote a blog post a number of years ago, just as relevant today, called "The Minimum in Search of the Minimum Viable Audience." And I bring that up and I use that all the time because it's an answer to your question is when we might say, okay, I'm going to look at this. Now I've done my homework. I know what I'm passionate about. I know what I can offer that's unique and valuable. And I've discovered who it is that I can give this to. When we can take that and narrow that down even more, in other words, to just sliver it down to the smallest segment that you could possibly think of, there's power in that. There's simplicity in that. And I'm going to come back and kind of give you a metaphor or an analogy or a story around this that I think demonstrates it well. Is if we were to walk into, say, a networking event and there were 1,500 people in the room, and we managed to make our way onto stage, and we said to people, hey, if you want to get rich, I'm going to be over here in the corner and you can come talk to me. Most people, if you're lucky, would maybe be quiet for an instant because you were making noise and then go about their initial chatter. But if instead of doing that, we walked into the room and we noticed over here were some people that, kind of looked like they fit our idea, they fit our who we would serve. In other words, we could even look at them just demographically, their age, their stature, the clothes that they're wearing, and things like that. And we wandered a little closer to that group, and maybe there were 5 people in that group, and they're having a chat. And we kind of eavesdrop for a minute. And we realize, ooh, they're talking about something that I know something about, that I'm passionate about. And next thing you know, we can find our way into that group and introduce ourselves, and be sharing our story and know these people in a very intimate way very, very quickly. This is this idea of the minimum viable audience. Is if you can make your way, think about the authority you would have in that group. Would you know them all by name? Would they know your name when you guys broke up the group after a little while? Would they come away with some nuggets maybe and remember you because of that? Of course they would. But when we try to yell at the group, at the masses, it just falls on deaf ears. So this idea of niching down, if you will, is the term that some people have used. But I prefer the idea of minimum viable audience. What's the least number of people that I need to start talking to in order to start to build my business and in order for my business to be viable?
Minimum viable audience. I just wrote that down. I love it.
And if you think about that in terms of, most people, and probably most people in your audience, Lee, is they have limited bandwidth. So you have limited bandwidth in terms of your time, in terms of your energy, and often in terms of your finances and your resources.
Right.
So if you are able to identify a minimum viable audience of, say, 200 people, your bandwidth will work. But if that audience that you're trying to reach is 2 million people, how on earth are you going to reach them? Unless you're independently wealthy and have a team of people already working for you. Right. So that idea of really going small, and this comes back to your initial question, simplifying.
Look, you've given a lot of great tips, stories, analogies, some things from your past. And just look at me now as a prospective client coach for you, right? I just reached out to you and I've requested a consultation. What does that initial conversation sound like?
The initial conversation is I don't do canned presentations or anything like that. I don't believe in that. It's going to be basically a meeting of the minds. We're going to talk together. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. You're going to ask a bunch of questions, and we're going to see where we're at. And there's some key things that I'm looking for in that conversation, and I would encourage you to look for as well. One of the key things is that you want something better. You're looking for a better outcome. And that could be more clients, more money, spending less time on your business, feeling less exhausted, feeling less frustrated, any number of things that would lead you to say, I want something better than what I'm experiencing right now. That would be the first thing that we would be discussing, is finding out what that is. In other words, what's your goal or what's your problem? What's standing in your way? The second thing I would be wanting to talk to you about is, do you believe that's possible? Do you have faith? Do you have belief in yourself and your skill set and what you're doing, that you believe you deserve, if you will, even from a core belief standpoint, that it's possible to get a better outcome? Then we want to go to the third thing that I'm going to look for, is that you are aware that, hey, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're never going to get there. In other words, something is standing in your way and you haven't identified it yet. There's a problem that's preventing you from getting that better outcome. The fourth thing I'm going to be looking for, and I'm very upfront, these are the questions that I ask, is that you've come to the conclusion that it's either impossible or unwise for you to solve that problem on your own. We probably wouldn't be having the conversation if you hadn't come to that conclusion. In other words, you're tired of the DIY. You're tired of going in circles and thinking, oh, I can figure this out. I can figure this out. I can figure this out, when you haven't moved the needle one bit.
Right.
So you realized, hey, I need help. This is unwise or even impossible for me to solve this on my own.
Right.
And then the fourth or the fifth thing would be that you have the desire to make it happen now. That you're interested in making your tomorrows different than your todays. That you're actually ready to do something about it. Perfectly upfront, perfectly transparent. And that's what we're going to have our conversation about. And then we're going to talk about, if we come to agreement, if we have those agreements in place, we say, yeah, you know what, those all resonate with me. Then we're going to talk about a possible path to make that happen.
Right.
And to see if there's a way that I can help you solve that problem or achieve that goal. If I can, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you specifically how I would go about doing that with you. And then it's up to you. So this is this idea of, what's the ultimate close? To me, the ultimate close is, what would you like to do now?
Right.
What would you like to do now? You either want to stay where you are, or you want to search other alternatives because you don't like the solution I'm presenting, or you say, yeah, let's work together.
Let's try this out. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it because sometimes you don't necessarily know how to articulate the problem.
Yes.
Or you don't know how to articulate where you're being held up at. Have
Yes.
you had a situation like that where a client just knows they're stuck, but they have no idea where they're stuck at or what's the next step? And if so, how do you navigate that? Because that seems to be a little more challenging.
Many times people aren't quite sure. Once we start to talk, they know that they can't get, they know, hey, I want to get from A to B. I want to get to B, but I don't know what's holding me back. I don't know what is stopping me or preventing me from getting there. So definitely that comes up quite a bit. The other thing that comes up a large percentage of the time, maybe even more often than not, is a false problem. Or a false goal, if you will. In other words, the reason they're not getting it is because they're looking in the wrong place.
Wow.
They keep trying to solve a problem, but that's not the real problem. So that's where we need to really go into depth and say, what's going on? What are you doing? And that's one of the questions. What are you doing now? What's getting you some level of success? And where are you running into, where are you not getting success? Let's kind of dissect it. Right? Let's diagnose the problem, see if we can find out what it is. So there are no perfect answers, and there are no boilerplate problems either. So it's kind of like, you walk into a doctor, the doctor's not going to say, I know exactly what's wrong with you. Here's the prescription. Go fill this and take the pills and be done with it.
Right.
The doctor's going to ask you questions, right? He's going to ask you about your symptoms so that he can find the underlying problem to what ails you. This is where coaching comes in. This is where the coaching element comes in. Consultative selling is finding out and identifying what the problem is, and then presenting a solution if you have it.
Right.
And this comes back to your comment before that you were feeding off of something that I had said about trying to be everything to everyone. Is that's the kiss of death as well, because you can't be. You have to be willing to say, you know what? I don't have a solution to this. Or this is not in my wheelhouse, or this is not my expertise. I know somebody who does. Maybe you can refer them directly to a colleague or a peer. Or maybe you can suggest some resources, some ways for them to find that. And then maybe you can continue to have a relationship with this person and say, you know what, you got me stumped. I don't really know what direction you need to take right now, but let me muddle on this for a while and let's stay in touch. And sure enough, it'll come to you. And then you can refer them to solutions. So if you step out of the shoes of trying to sell anybody anything,
Yeah.
and step into the seat of wanting to help people solve their problems and be sincere about that, then that makes this whole concept of selling superfluous.
Whew. Mark, before we wrap this up, I want to give you an opportunity to share anything you like to, anything you'd like to share with the listeners that we didn't get a chance to cover during the questions that I asked, the hot seat questions that I asked you.
Yes. Thank you. Well, I would say I'm feeling moved to give some tough love here. You mentioned it earlier, Lee, that there's very low barriers to entry, and it's true. They're almost non-existent. Pretty much everybody has a computer now. So the idea of going into business for yourself online is about the lowest barriers to entry that you could possibly imagine in history. And in that lies a lot of risk and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, because most people think they can just go online, and there's lots of people that will tell you this. There are lots of people that will give you the answers you want to hear and tell you can get rich and you can just go online and do all this without it costing you anything. And the reality is that's BS. It doesn't exist. Business principles are business principles, whether they're online or offline. So what I would encourage you to do is, before you go investing, even in that $19.99 program, that or $10 ebook or whatever, that by the way is going to drag you down a rabbit hole, is to pause for a minute and really ask yourself, what do I really, really, really want? Do I want to create something? Do I want to create this thing called, in my case, a coaching practice, a coaching business that can help me achieve my dreams, my visions of giving myself away, of serving others, and of being successful in the process? Is it possible? Yes, but we need to come with that mindset. There's no free ride. There's no get rich quick scheme. If there was, everybody would be doing it. And all that stuff you hear about that online of all these people who are doing that, most 99% of it is bunk. It's a lie. Sorry. Tough love, but that's reality. It's a reality check.
Right.
And on the positive side of this is I want to say that the idea of having that entrepreneurial moment in your life where you decide to kind of stake your claim and create something of your own, to me, is the greatest gift you can give yourself and the greatest gift you can give to the world. It's an expression of, Maslow called this moving towards self-actualization, of taking one step farther up that ladder to really being who you are intended to be, who you were created to be. So I want to encourage you to take that journey seriously and not frivolously, but to really take it seriously and realize that it is possible and you can do it. And then to decide to become a student of that. What is it going to take to make that happen? What is it that I don't know that I don't know? And to explore that learning and embrace it and get excited about it and get passionate about it and have fun with it. Because like a child, a child is constantly moving into those spaces of discovery, of curiosity. Reclaim that childhood curiosity, those moments of discovery where we learn something that we never knew we didn't know. And get back in touch with that and move forward with that. So that's kind of I hope a balanced piece of maybe inspiration or a message, if you will, that it's the greatest life on earth, and it's also the toughest life on earth, and in that is the joy.
I'll tell you, I love doing this because I often find myself with a big smile on my face, just listening to the words of encouragement, the words of, direction, I guess, purpose, motivation, all of these different things. And I appreciate you giving that message, Mark. I really do.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah.
But as we conclude this conversation, how can our listeners connect with you or learn more about the Clarity Coach and your incredible work in the world of online coaching and business strategy?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share that. I'd love to talk with anyone. Hopefully from this conversation, you've gotten to know a little bit about me and my style and how I communicate, and realize that I'm not here to sell you anything. But if you have a burning desire and a passion, even if you're afraid of it, even if you're maybe even embarrassed that you don't have skills, put all that aside. I'd love to talk with you and help you on your journey, and let you know if I can help you or not. My name is Mark Kanty, M-A-R-K, and the last name is K-A-N-T-Y. You can find me on LinkedIn, so reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Facebook. I'll also give you a couple of websites that you could check me out and get some more information about what I do and how we offer our services. My associate, my strategic partner is Jamie Scultetti, so you'll see her picture as well. So 2 websites for you. One is releasedynamics.net, as in release your brakes, and the dynamics of movement. So releasedynamics.net. And the other website that we have is called upscaleyourbusiness.com. Upscaleyourbusiness.com. Both exactly how they sound are spelled out. And I'm sure Lee probably has links or those things written in the description of the podcast too. So go ahead and search for those. Set up a call. Let's have a chat. Let's find out what your vision is, what your dream is, where you might be stuck, what problem might be standing in your way, whether it's a belief system, whether it's a personal issue, whether it's a business related issue. Let's just talk and see if something comes from that conversation.
Hey, thanks, Mark Kanty, a.k.a. the Clarity Coach, for joining me here on Hindsight the Podcast and sharing your inspiring journey as an online coaching business strategy. That's a lot. Online coaching business strategy expert. Your insights on mastering essential business skills, leveraging AI tools ethically. That's the big word. That's the key word. And embracing simplicity in the online world were eye-opening to me. And I'm sure it is to some of the listeners as well. Your dedication to continuous learning is truly commendable. And thanks for being a part of the podcast journey. Stay connected with the Clarity Coach. Get out there, get on the websites. It'll be in the show notes. But talk to this guy. Just this 35, 40 minutes that we've talked, I was sitting there. I took all kind of notes. Look, I'm saying things in the wrong tense because I'm excited.
Right? Mission accomplished, Lee. Mission accomplished. Yeah.
So
fantastic. I so appreciate you and all that you're doing and getting the word out. I love the name of your podcast, Hindsight, because that's where we learn, right? We can learn
Absolutely.
And grow from our hindsight and move forward into magical new places. So thank you to you and everything that you do in terms of moving forward and constantly getting the word out to help people shine.
My man. All right. You take care, Mark.
Cheers. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Hindsight the Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on future episodes packed with inspiring stories. Before you go, leave me a message with your thoughts, feedback, or suggestions for future topics. And if you're loving what you hear, please take a moment to rate this episode. Your feedback helps me to grow and reach more listeners just like you. So remember, life's a journey. Stay tuned. Stay curious and keep gaining wisdom through the power of hindsight. Until next time. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe, leave a message, and rate this episode.
When you look back in hindsight,